Good morning. It's the 29th today. I'm just going for a walk at the moment. I was thinking this morning because I got up and I had a coffee and some breakfast, and the movie 1917 was on. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but it's the World War I movie done in entirely one take, sort of. And I was thinking about it while watching, and I was like, you know what, all of these people were drafted, all of these young boys and men, they were drafted. They didn't have a choice. They had to take part in the war. They had to risk their lives. And I'm in no way comparing that to the situation that we have today. But if anything is comparable, it probably is this. It probably is this particular situation where our government is asking us to do something for the greater good. The only difference is that our opposition is a virus and not a group of people. And I think the reason it's a strange thought, besides the fact that, to me anyway, it hardly even feels like much of a sacrifice, is that I feel like the types of people that worship war and guns and demand respect for all of those men seem to also be the types of people that are so anti-listening to the government now. And in all honesty, I think the people today that are protesting against lockdown restrictions or pandemic restrictions are the types of people that those soldiers in World War I and World War II would have really hated. And I'm not entirely sure if these types of people even existed back then. Was there room for conspiracy theorists? Were people educated enough to be conspiracy theorists? Was there access to so much alternative news? In 1919 and 1920, when the Spanish flu broke out, Australia and New Zealand locked down. It's a very similar situation. They locked down straight away. As soon as they understood the gravity of the situation, they locked down both countries. And there are no reports of protests. People just got on with it. And I'm not saying that that's easy, but they did. The people of the time just got on with it. And when I look at my grandfather and I think about what he has been like all my life, they really were just a generation of people that just got on with it. And what's interesting is that I feel like that mentality skipped a bit. The war generation doesn't seem to have issues following rules and restrictions, but I find the generation after them far more influenced by conspiracies. And I'm not shitting on boomers because I'm sure they've had enough of that. But one of the really scary things is that I'm finding a lot of my friends at the moment are losing touch with their parents over a lot of this. And I mean a lot. A lot of my friends at the moment can't even speak to their parents anymore because they've gone so far down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories that they don't even respect their own children, let alone science or fact. And I'm not saying there aren't conspiracy theorists in my generation, but largely the boomer generation especially seems to be far more influenced by the wave of false information. And I think perhaps some of that is down to being scared. No offense to anyone of that generation watching now, but I know from what I've seen with boomers that I know that I think a lot of the willingness to believe uncorroborated, unverified information comes from the fact that it backs up an existing fear that they already have of just the world moving too fast. And I think a lot of conspiracy theorists see it as a way of creating a community of people that finally have the upper hand in a situation where they otherwise wouldn't. Years ago, I decided that I was going to follow the flat earth movement. I didn't believe in it, but I pretended to. So I joined a bunch of flat earth groups and flat earth organizations because I just wanted to understand what they were as a people and what drove that belief when there was so much evidence against it and so little supporting it. And what I found in those groups was a bunch of people that had low education / didn't have access to high education growing up, that felt disenfranchised by society, that felt left out, that felt left behind. And they'd stumbled across conspiracy theories and the flat earth community, and they treated it like a family. And they had names for people as well. One thing I thought was hilarious is anyone who believes in a spherical earth is called a globe head. Which is just such a crappy insult. It's like little kids calling each other poo-poo head or poo-poo bum or something. But yeah, they had a community. And scarily again, what I found in most of these groups. Just like the conspiracy theorists today, they were heavily Christian. And I found the admins of a lot of these groups were from Christian universities that taught creationism over evolution. And that seems to be a common trait. And again, I don't mean to crap on Christians. I'm not doing that at all. But what I found through being a part of all of these groups is that Christianity, capitalism, and conspiracies seem to travel in the same spaces. And maybe that's because, again, this is a generalization, and I mean no offense to anybody, but again, maybe that's because they generally all encourage blind faith with no investigation. And that is the easiest way to consume information. I don't have a fix for it, by the way. These are just observations that I've made from being a part of these groups and observing what these people have said. I don't know if there is a fix. I think with so much access to information via the internet, anybody can pose as an expert, and you can almost guarantee that a couple thousand people are going to follow them because that's good enough for them. It's a shame, really, because they are the most vulnerable. And I know a lot of people my age miss talking to their parents, but they just can't anymore because they've gone down the rabbit hole. And if I had to guess as to where this was all gonna go, I honestly wouldn't have a clue. But I know a lot of people in New Zealand, not just conspiracy theorists, are complaining about not being able to travel internationally, which I think is some of the most blind, ignorant shit about the whole thing. What they don't seem to understand is that international travel is a two-way system. While we've managed to get this pandemic under control here, people overseas have not. And safe international travel requires that. Because at the moment, other countries can receive us safely, but we can't receive them safely. But I'm also aware that eventually that door will have to open. And at the moment, the government that we have right now is being hopeful. Hopeful that the rest of the world will be able to get up to speed with us. I, however, am not so hopeful for the rest of the world. I mean, I've hardly been on the planet for that long. I'm not very old. But it's my experience that most countries care about money more than lives. Judith Collins at the moment, who's our opposition leader and right-wing conservative piece of shit, has been talking about an acceptable amount of deaths that will need to be considered in order to realistically open up the borders. The problem with that is that she has the balls to say that as the opposition leader, but she doesn't have the balls to say what she thinks an acceptable death amount is. She's prepared to say that some people might die, and she's prepared to say that that's inevitable and that there's an acceptable amount, but she's not prepared to say what that amount is, which is just cowardly. But if I had to guess, I'd say we're in this for at least another 3 years, which means that this won't be the last season of Jordan and lockdown. I don't think so. I think we're most likely going to have at least another 3 or 4 seasons. And that's just the world we live in. And in all honesty, I still feel pretty damn lucky. In fact, I think living during the time of a pandemic has made me feel even more lucky. Because at the end of the day, all things considered, in terms of where I am and where I'm stuck, New Zealand is not a bad place to be. In fact, it's probably one of the best places to be. Because as much as conspiracy theorists can complain about this and having their freedoms taken away and not being able to live their lives as free people, all it takes is a click of a button to turn the news on and take a look at what's happening in Afghanistan. The pandemic over there is the least of their worries. And in truth, I'd say some of those people probably wish that they would catch COVID-19. Because that's just how bad it is. There's people who are willing to risk their lives just to cross a border or to try to leave their own country. And then you look at conspiracy theorists here complaining because they want to go to McDonald's. That thought is enough to make you angry at conspiracy theorists. Which isn't helpful. But the perspective is frightening. But this is where I am. This is where I'm supposedly stuck and imprisoned as a sheeple. Strange world. August 29, day 12. Perspective.